Yesterday we started the motor class, and so we made a basic information that we were going to keep track of the motor, which was just the serial number, how many hours it had been in service already, and how many hours what the maximum was before it really should go in for service. We wrote the getters for all of those variables, which is pretty typical. You almost always end up writing the getters, so after a while you just go, okay, I'll just fill them all in. And then we started to write the idea, well, how are we going to change the information that's inside here? And the way to change it is to add more hours as the motor gets used. Okay, so somebody's coming along every time the motor gets used, and they're doing some data entry that says this plane was in the air or this motor was used for however many hours, 10 more hours. And we just turn around and dump that into the current hours total. Okay, and so now we've got something that at least keeps track of all of the hours. We wrote some unit tests. We started out and wrote one to see whether or not it was initialized properly, and we wrote another one to see whether or not it looked like the hours at least increased. Okay, so what's missing from motor is the ability now to ask a couple of questions. And the important questions are, is it time for service for this thing, yes or no? And, oh, if it is time for service, has it gone way past the number of hours that it was supposed to? I want to know how many hours passed, because that means I might change the way that I do maintenance on it. Okay? So we need two more methods. One that says public, now Boolean, is past, and we'll be specific here, time for service. Okay, and here's a trick. If you don't know how you expect it to work for now, you can just write any code that says, oh, I'll just always say it is. The advantage there is that when you go to use it, at least it's syntactically correct. It might still not be the correct thing, but it'll give you some result. And if I had a unit test for it, you could write this method, right? Get the stub method in there that doesn't do anything. At least it'll fail the unit test rather than producing a syntax error, which puts you a little farther on the way. So stub methods for things that do nothing are always a good idea. Let the unit tests help you fill it in later. Okay, so there's one for its past time for service, and the other one is tell me how many hours past service I happen to be. And this one, I guess, we should say get hours past service just to help enforce what it actually is. And same thing there. For now, we can just return a 0 and go back and figure out sometime later what it should be. Oops. Now I got, and thank you, autofill. There we go. Okay, so notice that now I've got something that's completely wrong. It still allows me to go back and write a unit test. Okay, so let's make a test for not past service. There's one test, and there's also going to be another test for gone past service. So by the way, notice that basically every time you do something in your code, you start to get not just one test, but multiple tests. Right? Because now I've got two conditions, right? As soon as I put that variable, I could or it couldn't, so I have to test both cases. Same with an if statement. If you put an if statement anywhere in your code, you're going to end up saying, well, either it could do this or either it could do that, so now I have to test either it could do this or either it could do that. And so the tests tend to multiply even faster than the code does to test them all.
Doesn't a red bar in one test indicate a green bar in the other?
Nope. Not necessarily. The tests are somewhat independent depending on how you write them. Okay, so in this version, we have the setup method that's already given us a motor with, in this case, 100 hours of service. So we can take that motor and run with it. We can do a motor.add hours, and we can just add something that definitely puts it past service, 150 or 100 plus 50 is even better. Gives at least some sense of I expected it to have 100 and I'm going over by 50. Okay. And then we want to get the result. So talk to a motor dot is past time for service, and I think that is past should be false. Oh, notice I've got a disconnect here because I'm doing not past service, but I gave it something that was definitely past service, right? So there's where the names help. So we'll save that one for our later test. One that's actually supposed to do that. And we'll make this one something less. And just for fun, I'll write that as 100 minus 10 to give the sense of I know 100 is the maximum. All right, so just trying to make it clear. So there's one test. So I guess the other test is 100 plus 50. And in this case, we can now say, is it past time for service? And the answer in this case should be true. Nice, easy tests. You could now run the tests. Do the save if necessary. Oops. That's just because I'm getting something off the web for that thing off of Git. It's complaining about that. Okay. So there's a couple of tests. We'll run those tests. And now that test is wrong. It's not surprised that gone past service is right because it always reports true, so it's always going to say gone past service. Okay, so now we can go, we've got at least one test that's failing. Now we can go into the motor class, and this is obviously wrong. We need to fix it. So what should we do here? How would you know when it's past service? So if current hours is greater than or equal to maximum before service, right? So there's an if statement in there. So if use control space to get your list of variables. So if current space is greater than, and I guess in this case it's truly greater than, right? If it's equal, it means it's not time for service, is greater than control space, maximum hours before service, then that's return true. Okay, and then the default condition is just always report false. Okay, notice that this still falls in with our rejection style, right? Now that we look at it this way, it says, oh, the happy case is, oh, these motors last forever and they never need to go in for service and it really doesn't matter. And then the real life, oh my God, something bad happened is, oh, I guess we did somehow run over. Okay, so there's still that rejection. The bad thing is we have more than we should have. Okay, so still a rejection style if. You can run that thing and see whether or not it passes the test. And now it passes those tests, so we know it works for both cases of past service and not past service. Okay, so we'll do the same thing for the case of, we've also got that other empty method for whether or not hours past service is correct. So let's go in and add some tests to see how many hours it went past service. I'll steal something like this. And we'll do, call it in hours. So we'll add that many hours. In this case, we'll get an integer back. Is talk to the motor and ask it for get hours past service, which is that one. And then I think that hours past should be 50. Okay? So notice that's exact. I know exactly how many hours past I want it to be. So 49 isn't good enough. It better be exactly 50. Okay? Any other tests that we could do for whether or not it's gone past service hours? What should it report if it's not past the amount of time? What should that hours number be?
0.
How many hours
You got two choices here depending on what you want to report, right? So this is now a behavior thing. What's best for this situation? Choice number one is if it hasn't gone past service, then that number should be 0. Okay? The other choice is, no, I really want you to tell how many hours it is before it's have to go into service again. In other words, produce a negative number to say it's minus 50 or it's minus 30 before it actually has to go in. Depends on what makes more sense for your application. So I'm going to make the executive decision here that says that I just want it to always report 0 until it's past due, and then I want to start telling me how many past due. Okay? So now we get another test. And notice that it's the test now that helps define the behavior. You can go look at the test and you can go, which one of those two things did he want by how I write the test. So this is not gone past service hours. And I'm going to add something less. I'll make it minus 20 just so that it looks a little different. Okay? And if I get hours past service, I'm saying hours past service should report exactly 0 and not minus 20. Okay? So there's that idea. The tests define, help you see what the behaviors are supposed to be. Okay? Now we can run the test and see whether or not the tests fail. And at least one of the tests fails, which is no surprise because we haven't written any of the code. Okay? So we'll go back into the motor class and we'll fix the code that we've got. That's obviously wrong. No surprise it worked for the second case because it's always reporting 0. Okay? So what would the normal thing be to return? Or what would be the value that you would calculate? It would be current hours minus however many hours was the maximum. That was control space is the one that is nice to you. Yeah. Okay? And then if all life was good, you would just always return that value. Just calculate it. So this is the blinders on. Whatever the number I happen to calculate is the right number. I think I got that right. Or is this the other way around? Maximum hours minus current hours? No.
No, you got that.
I think that's right.
Yeah.
Okay, we'll find out, and we'll let the test tell us. Okay, so we'll take that thing, and now we'll run the test and see what happens. And notice what happened here is that the test that used to pass now fails, and the one test that, the hours past service now succeeds. They sort of flipped. And that's not unusual to see. Sometimes you make a fix in the code and 3 tests will magically work and another one will fail for whatever reason, so you can get used to that, right? So in this circumstance, the test was succeeding because I was always returning 0, which is what I wanted. But now that I've refined it, it's now wrong. Okay? So now that means that we've got the regular case fine. We know what happens if it's gone past service. So what would we do if it's, and how would we fix this?